What is good and what is up, y'all? It's your boy here, Jay, back and better than ever with another episode of Chargers Banter. The Chargers losing back-to-back weeks after a 3-0 start, both of their losses coming to NFC East opponents, to the Giants and Commanders, and now we're looking forward to next week to hopefully bounce back against the Miami Dolphins. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty and what's really happening with the Chargers' woes, all right here on Chargers Banter. What's up, y'all, and welcome back to another episode of Chargers Banter. I know we've been absent for a couple weeks now, but had some things going on, now bouncing back, and now that we're done with Padres baseball as well and all that Padres Banter episode, we're going to get kicking into high gear with all things football, as well as on my JPA side, not just these specific, team-oriented episodes, but also getting going on the whole broader aspect of sports. But with that being said, welcome to another episode of Chargers Banter. It's been a rough one. Chargers have been struggling as of late. After a 3-0 start, the Chargers losing back-to-back weeks to the Giants and the Commanders. And now we're looking forward to next week to see if they can bounce back after those losses. A lot of the analysts were going ahead and considering the Chargers to be, one of the highly touted teams in the NFL after 3 not only wins, but in divisional wins. So that is also, something to recognize, and it's tough to do. No matter what division you're in, to go ahead and get 3 divisional wins is just, it's unheard of, especially in the first 3 weeks. So doing that, a lot of people were high on the Chargers, but unfortunately they've faced people outside of the division and they haven't had too much success, specifically the NFC East, who have been their 2 outside opponents outside of those first 3 games. The Giants really just manhandled the Chargers in every facet, and also the Commanders. It's just been a lot of injury proneness, as well as the offensive line hasn't been, great. The defense has been holding it up for what they can, but at the end of the day, your defense constantly on the field is going to be rough eventually at some point if your offense isn't scoring any points. So let's get into exactly what's happening with this Chargers team in the past couple of weeks, and we're going to be glossing over not just this past week, but like I said, we haven't talked about the Chargers in a while, so we're going to be talking about, the past 3 weeks of what has been happening with the Chargers. But before we get into anything else, let's get into the breaking news of this week for the Chargers. The Chargers go ahead and make a trade with the Baltimore Ravens, sending Alohi Gilman in a 5th-round pick for Odafe Oweh, a defensive end who had 10 sacks last season. Something of a need for both teams. Ravens need secondary and Chargers need pass rush, with Khalil Mack being out, so big-time move by Ortiz with a mid-season trade. Don't really see a trade happening this early and that often, especially with the Chargers. So making moves and not being satisfied, I think, is the biggest thing with Joe Ortiz, and props to him, but I know we will be looking to add as well on the offensive line because we need it. It's just a big glaring hole right now. But all in all, I'm excited to see what our pass rush looks like now, and excited to see more Holden. Elijah Molden, so more of him in the safety position, as well as Tony Jefferson, not to mention Thule, Bud, and Oweh are going to be the tandem for our defensive ends until Khalil Mack gets back. So it's going to be interesting, guys. Our defense is looking really stout. I really like the addition of Odafe Oweh. I think an athletic defensive end like him will fit perfectly. I think Bud Dupree is solid, just hasn't gotten a lot of pressures this year, and I'm not sure if that's just a decline on his part, or just, a slow start to the season, but we'll see. Eventually, I think, Oweh will take that slot and be next to Thule until Khalil Mack gets back. But this is also a great pick because Ortiz, coming from the Baltimore Ravens, being, the players ops over there, understanding all of what's going on over there and understanding the players that they have. Harbaugh to Harbaugh. Oweh obviously going to another Harbaugh. I think it's just an easy fit. It's a perfect fit, and we'll see what happens. He's only 26 years old, so there's a lot of upside with Odafe Oweh. But the Chargers go ahead and send Alohi Gilman, so I just want to go ahead and give a shout out to Alohi. I understand, it may have been an up and down career with the Chargers, but at the end of the day, I know that he always gave his heart out there. Blown coverages or not, missed tackles or not, I know a lot of people are thinking about that in the back of their mind. At the end of the day, I am so grateful for the, like I said, the, ability that he displayed and being able to, there was a couple plays that he did make in a Chargers uniform that I can recall that really switched the momentum of the game, switched the momentum of the team, and really, brought life to the team in whatever situation that was, whether it was an interception, whether it was a TFL, whether it was a broken up play with a pass. I mean, there's a ton of plays that I think we can go over with Alohi Gilman in the Chargers uniform that we're like, okay, like let's go Alohi. So it's gonna hurt for a little bit, obviously, because he's also a great guy when it comes to just being very personable. Always seeing him on social media and whatnot. But with all that being said, just want to give my shout out and my love out to Alohi and wishing him the best in a Baltimore Ravens uniform. I know that they're gonna need him. And it was a little bit of a mixture here in Los Angeles because we just signed Molden, and then we got Tony Jefferson, and then we got Derwin James, and there's just a lot of safeties in the room. So freeing up that space to be able to see what Molden can do. Obviously, Tony Jefferson signing him on the league minimum and being on the practice squad for, like 1 week, felt like. Neither here nor there. Just want to go ahead and give a shout out to Alohi and wish him the best. And, it's going to miss him in the Chargers uniform. But now let's go ahead and get into the nitty gritty of what exactly is happening with this Chargers team in the past 3 weeks. Really, yes, I understand that we got the win in week 3, but it's been 3 weeks. The first 2 weeks were great. Chiefs and Raiders, we really just, inserted our dominance, and we haven't done that in the past 3 weeks, and especially against the Broncos where it kicked off, even though, like I said, we got the dub. There was just a glaring holes that we'll get into later on in this episode. But also, like I said, the past 2 weeks against the NFC East opponents just has been abysmal. But let's get right into it. The Chargers, after winning 3 straight and 3 straight in division, would go ahead and drop back-to-back games and back-to-back weeks at the hands of the NFC East. After this past Sunday, they would lose to the hands of Jaden Daniels and the Commanders in the homecoming showing in his hometown, downing the Chargers 27-10. A really convincing win over the Chargers. Even though the Chargers managed to get out to a 10-0 lead, it didn't matter as the Commanders stayed put, even with their key players like Terry McLaurin and Austin Eckler out. They managed to get enough from the offense from Deebo Samuel and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who had 14 carries, 111 yards, and 2 tutties, and Jaden Daniels also going 15 for 26, 231 TD, and 39 rushing yards. The defense also played well, having 5 sacks, 6 TFLs, a forced fumble, and a recovery on a fumble recovery off of QJ, and a Mike Sainristil pick on Justin Herbert. Deebo Samuel led receivers with 8 receptions for 96 yards and a TD. Luke McCaffrey had 50 yards as well receiving, and even had a 90 return yards on the day, 30 per return. Overall, the Commanders dominated the Chargers after the first drive by the Chargers. Ladd would get his first TD of the season, making it 7-0, so great to see his confidence go up there. Justin Herbert, though, had a mediocre game, but had high completion percentage, going 22 of 29, 166 yards, and a touchdown and an interception, 86.3 passer rating, even though Herbert did run for 4 carries for 60 yards, had a long of 41-yard rush, but all for naught, as he was sacked 5 times and couldn't get anything going. Also, Amarion Hampton looked to have a decent game going, 12 carries for 44 yards, but would later exit the game after going down with an ankle injury and landing on the IR. So unfortunate news there. Not to mention that Trey Pipkins and Mekhi Becton both went down, so Herbert was getting absolutely obliterated with pressure and had zero help, trying to run for his life and do what he could. But Herbert can only take so much when it comes to hits, and even though he is a bigger guy, it doesn't mean that he can just go out there and just take all of these hits. He needs protection. That's the number one priority. He needs protection. All in all, a bad showing after a good first drive, but we have injury bug with this Chargers team once again, and this season it feels like it's gonna just be that way, but got to deal with what we have, and got to find ways to win even after a terrible week before with the Giants and in the Commanders. So just finding a way, not to mention that they took, a couple of a touchdown back. There was a couple of second down conversions that Justin Herbert threw that got taken back. And there's just nothing going our way in that game. The Commanders completely dominated that game in every facet. And it just looked that way. And 27-10 speaks volumes, obviously. We had a great first drive. But that's just the first drive of the game. I feel like a lot of what a football game is ebbs and flows. And right out of the gate, both teams are going to come out firing. I think for the general fan, they don't really understand that first drive is kind of your opportunity to go ahead and catch the defense sleeping. So in every, game, whether it's the Chargers or anybody else, you can kind of see the drives going more fluid. It's a lot easier to go ahead and get these plays down. It's a lot easier to, go ahead and get completions because of the fact that it's your first time as a defense seeing the offense and what they are running schematic wise and what you've studied. So seeing it out in front of you, it's different. It's going to take a little bit. It takes a drive or two. So then eventually, towards the end of the game, you start to see defenses honing in on what the offense is doing. So that was great, right? We got, our 10 points or 7 points, whatever you want to call it, on those first couple of drives in the first quarter. But at the end of the day, that is just the first quarter. There's no adjustments made throughout the entire game, considering that 2 of our linemen went down, not to mention our running back went down. Why don't we start to, try and air it out a little more? I understand that we still had 29 passing attempts, but there's no reason why we should be running the ball with Hassan Haskins. There's no reason why we should be running the ball with Kamani Vidal if there's nobody to block him, right? I'm not saying that they're bad running backs, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't get the ball, but we literally don't have an offensive line. So if Amarion Hampton can't do it, who is our number 1 running back, why do we expect to go ahead and try and do, even out the offensive game and do 50 run, 50 pass? It's like, bro, we need to start ripping the ball a lot more with Justin Herbert and identify that we're not going to have a chance in this game if we don't start passing it right now. And I think it comes too late with Greg Roman. I think that, honestly, he thinks about it way too late. And just thinks like, all right, we need to, and listen, hear me out. I get it. You want to stick to your guns. You don't want to jump ship too fast. But at the end of the day, when you see all hell break loose when it comes to injuries and things happening with Justin Herbert literally getting obliterated in front of your eyes, you have to do something differently. You have to get him out of harm's way. There's no way that he's not going to get, pressured, because we are probably the most pressured team in the entire NFL today. But at the end of the day, you still have to find a way to make things work, right? I just don't see it happening right now with Greg Roman. We need to pass the ball more, and he has passed the ball more. He's passed the ball more on percentage-wise most in the NFL on first and second down, most since I believe like 2018. So he has been passing the ball a lot more on earlier downs. The way that Justin Herbert is even running the ball, start implementing some RPOs. I don't know. It's just thought, right? It's just thought. But ultimately, at the end of the day, 27-10, the Commanders go ahead and down the Chargers. It just was a terrible showing. And, that was right after this game where the Chargers hit the road in week 4 and went to the Meadowlands for a showdown versus the New York Giants and newly inserted rookie quarterback Jackson Dart. For the first drive, the Giants dominated the game after Jackson Dart rushed for a TD on his first TD in the NFL on the first drive of his career. Not to mention in his first start, and not to mention that the Chargers had never given up a first half touchdown before that moment this season. So before Jackson Dart drove the entire length of the field on his first drive of his NFL career, in his first start of his NFL career, he scores a touchdown on the defense who hasn't given up a touchdown in the entire first half of the first 3 games that they've played. So that was baffling, but, props to Jackson Dart. That drive, he looked pretty solid. But yeah, hadn't done that until the rookie showed up. The Chargers looked lackluster after the first 3-week dominance, even though week 3 was kind of here and there. And the Giants defense got after Justin Herbert, having 2 sacks, 4 TFLs, and 2 interceptions. One by Drew Phillips and the other by Dexter Lawrence, the first of his career. Shocker that a defensive tackle that has never had an interception in his entire career gets an interception against Justin Herbert, who's 6'6", mind you. And that's the other thing. I've seen a lot more tipped balls than I have in past this year by Justin Herbert. It's rather concerning for me. I don't think anybody's really talking about it because they're just paying attention to all the flash and him running the ball. I've seen all that. I've seen it. Now everybody wants to pay attention to it. Whoop-de-doo. Happy for you guys that you guys are actually seeing what Justin Herbert is capable of. But what I am concerned about is the tipped balls. Last game, he had a tipped ball that was picked. The game before that, he had a tipped ball that was picked. The game before that, there was like 4 or 5 tipped balls from the Denver Broncos. And even the games before that, there's been a couple there. I think every game there's been a tip ball. So I'm not sure if it's the offensive line's issue. Yes, partly is because of the fact that you need to get that block off. You need to get, everything squared away when it comes to blocking. But as far as Justin Herbert goes, bro, you're 6'5", 6'6". I'll give you 6'7" in cleats. There's no logical reason that anybody, I don't care how tall they are, you're 6'6", bro. Your arm is up here. I understand where the ball goes, arm angles, all this other stuff. I understand it. I played baseball. I get it, right? But there's just no reason why in your 6th year, 5th year, whatever, that you should be having as many batted balls as you have. The experience that you have. And also on top of that, you already know the offensive line play that you have. You cannot get comfortable with what you have. And I'm not speaking like, oh, Justin Herbert, you need to do better. Dude, he's doing everything that he possibly can. But it is concerning to me how many batted balls there has been this season. And there's only been 5 games. Very concerning. But that's neither here nor there because, like I said, it was a shocker. I'm being sarcastic here, that Dexter Lawrence went ahead and got that interception. But Herbert would look at, like I said, a shell of himself, going 23 of 41, 203, a TD and 2 interceptions with a 57.3 QBR rating. Amarion would have his breakout game, going 12 carries for 128 yards and a touchdown with a long of 54 on that TD run. So great to see his potential, but back to his injury, going to have to see how long he is out. That's just something that you don't want to see, especially after a Najee Harris blown ACL, which we haven't even talked about here as well. But just the injury bug, man. The injury bug. It feels like every single year this Chargers team has something else going on with him, right? Whether it's the injury bug or having a very complete roster and the one key player is out. It's just, you can't win. But like I said, Amarion having his breakout game, especially with that 54 touchdown run, showed his breakout speed, hitting that corner, really hitting the sideline. So I love to see that. But QJ having a hell of a game as well. 8 receptions, 98 yards, and a touchdown, showing again why he is still worth the pick, even though he had those down years early on. Keenan also had 3 receptions, and Ladd had only 1, and the defense for the Giants was just suffocating Herbert as he was indecisive, and for the first time in this year, could not get a groove going. Overall, the team just couldn't get anything going, even though they had 338 total yards, and the Giants only having 250 total yards. Would be mainly due to the Chargers having 14 penalties for 107 yards, and also getting beat in time of possession by 11 minutes. Getting beat in time possession by 11 minutes. And also 14 penalties for 170 yards. I know for a fact that Harbaugh is not happy about that. 14 penalties for 107 yards. And on top of that, being a run-heavy head coach and being beat by 11 minutes by time of possession, absurd. The one thing that I knew when Phillip Rivers was at the quarterback position for us was we were never, ever going to lose in time of possession. There was never a time I looked and I was like, oh, damn, we're getting beat by that much time of possession. And the times that I did do that with Phillip, we were getting beat by like 3 or 4 or 5 minutes. Never were we getting beat by double-digit minutes for time of possession. So I don't know if it's Herbert rushing. I don't know if it's Greg Roman telling him to rush. I don't know. But what I do know is when Phillip Rivers was at the helm, he used every second of that clock. Now, did he win a lot of the games that is his win percentage all high? No. But I just know that Phillip had that internal clock in his head that was like, you know what? I'm going to slow this game down. I'm not trying to give the ball back to this team right after my defense just got off the field. I don't know Herbert understands that, but I'm just saying we're getting beat in time of possession, and it speaks volumes. So we need to change that. And the Giants did enough to win the game as Dart rushed for 54 yards, over 54 yards, and a TD in his debut, and going 13 of 20, 111 yards passing, and a TD. Chargers did have 6 sacks and 8 TFLs on defense in that game, as Thule had 4 of them. So props to Thule going ahead and showing why he obviously is still that guy in the game, but all for naught in the loss. Although he also had 10 tackles, and a shout out to Troy Dye for 14 solo tackles. So shout out to both of those guys going ahead and flying around the field on defense, because it seemed as if the offense couldn't do anything, and you guys were on the field for 90% of the time. But shout out to those guys. And Scatabo had a day as well, going 25 carries, 79 yards, but just couldn't capitalize to score enough points as the Giants would win 21-18. But yeah, guys, that was just an abysmal game. It especially after the 3 wins coming into Meadowlands. I personally internally felt like this was a trap game. And sure enough was. It sure enough was. And I hope that, going forward, obviously we didn't go into the next week with a different mentality, but I hope going forward that we can, try and find a rhythm, try and bounce back. I understand the injury bug, but we are never going to be healthy, just like baseball. You're never going to be healthy from the start to the end of the season. It's just impossible to have a completely healthy roster. So you got to work with what you got. But overall, the past 2 games has been a multitude of things, from blown blocking schemes to injuries to not tackling. There are a plethora of things I could say that need to be fixed. But at the end of the day, it's the inconsistency that I think will kill this team the most. The guys being in and out of the lineup due to injury or whatever the case may be will hurt this team, and has already, starting with the offensive line, which is one of the worst units in the league, giving up already 17 sacks in 5 games. All in all, the effort I think is there. It just feels the production is not, and the injury bug is hurting this team once again. And like I said, guys, it's just a matter of trying to find a way to push with the guys that you got, but there's a plethora of things going wrong. Like I think, like I said, the inconsistency is going to kill this team more than anything. We're gonna have people coming in and out of the lineup that we need in, and then out, in, out, in, out, and then not having the form of rhythm, consistency, and I guess just smooth sailing that you have when you have a unit that is, played with each other for a while, played a certain amount of games, has a certain amount of experience with each other. That matters. And we truthfully haven't had any consistency when it comes through the entire offense, not just the offensive line. I think the defense has been relatively healthy, knock on wood. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's just a rather inconsistent lineup when it comes to the offense, and that's going to kill us. That is going to be the reason why this Charger team doesn't succeed, is because of the fact that we can't get people on the field. And what people say, the best ability is availability. The Chargers are the 25th in scoring offense, guys. 25th with Justin Herbert. And I understand that the wide receiver weapons aren't all too astounding. We do got some solid pieces. But now we don't have our, 2 running backs. Well, our tight ends aren't going to, give us all too much production. So it's crazy to even think about. But we have the 25th scoring offense, but we have this number 6 scoring defense and number 7 overall defense when it comes to opponent yards per game. So it just needs to be more production on offensive side, even though the rush and the pass stats per game are inflated because of the first 3 weeks. If you do go look at those, per game, per pass, per reception, all that, it does look a lot better than what we have produced on the field, and also record-wise. It just doesn't make sense, but it's because of the fact that those first 2 weeks were so inflated. And, QJ's been doing his thing, and I think he's really holding up the wide receiver core in the passing game. But outside of that, man, it really doesn't – it adds up. We're the 25th scoring offense, though. But now that we dove into the nitty-gritty, let's go ahead and look forward to this Sunday as we face against the lowly Miami Dolphins, who just got handed an L, a tough L at that, by the Carolina Panthers 27-24. No better time to bounce back after back-to-back L's versus a team who has so many questions looming, from their head coach to their quarterback to their wide receiver, who just had a season-ending injury and surgery. Prayers up to Tyreek Hill. If he will be back in a uniform after that injury, they keep losing. Nothing seems to be going right with this Miami Dolphins team. team. So time to recoup and figure out how to move forward with the pieces we have and try to maintain till the end of the season. We can do it. I believe in Harbaugh and I believe in Ortiz making possible changes here in the future, especially with our O-line. We need a left tackle. We need a right tackle. Whatever helps. I can get anybody, my brother, to come out there and try and pass block. In the end, as much as it is negative, we need to continue to look for the positive, guys, because it is too early in the season to give up. We could be 0-3 in the division, winless. Who knows? Any of those could matter, or any of those could be in play. So I just encourage, Bolt fam to keep the optimism, and I understand that this feels like a revolving door, especially for my early Charger fans, my San Diego Charger fans. It just feels inevitable. And it feels like this happens every year. It feels like this is just something that is going to be something that's going to happen every single year, even if we do win a Super Bowl. And even if we get a chance to, it's just going to happen. We're going to have a key injury. It's just going to happen. So at this point in time, I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. It is what it is. We just got to push forward with what we got. All the great additions we had in the offseason, I feel like are gone now. But like I said, keep the optimism, Bolt fam. We got a very great opportunity this weekend to bounce back and be 4-2, not 3-2. And I think with football, the record, 3-0, right? It looked so great. 3-2 looks much worse, obviously. But what I'm trying to say is it takes 2 games for your record to look like crap or look mediocre, right? And even, it takes 4-1 for your record to look good when you're really not that good. My point is that regardless of what our record says right now, we just need to continue to push forward and not worry about the wins and losses total. It's too early in the season. It's too early. We won those 3 division games. We're still up in that aspect. So to keep moving forward and not worry about the wins and losses total and who's behind us. I understand the Chiefs, just won a couple games. Who the fuck cares? You know what I'm saying? Like, just continue to go forward. We have a lot of winnable games to focus on that, right? These past 2 games, I felt like were winnable in the sense that, number one, rookie quarterback started against the Giants. All right. Didn't win that one, whatever. And then, obviously, Jaden Daniels is hobbling, been out for 2 weeks. So it's like, all right, might have a chance to win that. Obviously, injuries play into this. But at the end of the day, those are winnable games. So to put our head down and continue to try and focus on the games in front of us and not worry about what's behind us, not worry about our record, not worry about the division, and not worry about who is behind us in the division, I think that we will be okay. And just to keep the optimism, I know the injuries suck, but it's inevitable, guys. Like I said, it's inevitable. But I do want to get into what happened a couple weeks ago in that Broncos matchup, because even though I did say that was a dominated matchup, it really wasn't, guys. It really wasn't. But the Chargers go ahead and take out in that week another in-division foe in the Denver Broncos, 23-20 in SoFi for the first official home game of the season. Justin Herbert had to manage the game and toss the rock around and lead the Chargers to another tight in-division victory, going 28-47, 300 yards, a TD, interception with 76.6 passer rating. Najee Harris looked to get it going in a Chargers uniform finally, but blew his ACL, guys, like I had been lamenting earlier. Early on in the game, for someone who has been healthy his entire career, it's disheartening and sad, especially since it's in a Charger uniform. Not to mention, coming back from blowing his eye out on the 4th of July, it's just terrible, so prayers up. And it also doesn't make any sense. This man was completely healthy in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform, not a scratch on this guy. Then all of a sudden, he comes over to the Chargers and blows his eye out. And then the first game that we feel like he's really getting it going and it might replace Amari Hampton, blows his ACL. You can't make this up. You can't make this up, guys. But in replacement, Amari Hampton had a breakout day, going 19 carries, 70 yards. At that time, that was his breakout game before, obviously the Giants won. And a TD. QJ had another fantastic day, especially on the number 1 corner like Patrick Surtain, the second, having 6 receptions for 89 yards with 14.8 yards per reception, while Keenan went ahead and just continue to show why he deserves to be on this Chargers roster, being back with his team, and never should have left with the connection him and Herb have. 7 receptions, 65 yards, and a touchdown. At that point in time, that was 3 straight games with a touchdown for Keenan Allen. Defense also balled out holding Bo Nix to 14 of 25, 153, and a touchdown to Courtland Sutton. While Courtland Sutton did have 6 receptions for 118 yards and a touchdown, and J.K. Dobbins did have 11 carries for 83 yards and a touchdown. The Charger defense had held everything else to a minimum. But yeah, had a breakout day for J.K. Dobbins. He thought he was going to get the dub against us. No sirree, Bob. But yeah, Courtland Sutton went off as well. Also, the D balled out, having 3 passes deflected, 4 QB hits, 5 TFLs, 4 of them by Derwin. Just absolutely insane. And sacks by Derwin and Troy Dye as well. Derwin had a fantastic game, having 12 total tackles, 10 solo, 4 TFLs, and 2 sacks, being all over the place and showing why he is the best safety in the league once again. Darius Davis also had 24.7 yards on 3 returns, so great on special teams there. And Dicker the kicker continues with his title as the most accurate kicker in NFL history, going 3 for 3 in that game against Denver with a long of 43 and 2 for 2 on extra points. Was a great team in Denver, the Chargers beat, and regardless of the record, they are going to be there at the end of the year, guys. This Denver Broncos team, I'm lamenting too. This Denver team just went to Philadelphia and beat them. So understanding that they are capable of doing necessary things to win. That was a great win that we scraped out against them. And I think that people really weren't paying attention to what had happened. Yes, we got the win, and yes, it was a great in-division win, and it felt almost as if we dominated them, but we really didn't. This is a scary Denver team. They really got after us on the defensive side of the ball, and if it wasn't for Herbert and that crazy, magnificent throw that he had, and I'm going to go ahead and show it to you guys right here, we would have lost that game. So Herbert going ahead and diming it up, escaping the pressure, and then showing why he is obviously one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't know anybody else that can make that throw. I truthfully don't know anybody else that can make that throw besides maybe Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and maybe Joe Burrow, or Patrick Mahomes. But obviously Patrick Mahomes, but maybe Joe Burrow, So, but yeah, no, it was a great Denver team, so we can't, gloss over that. But we also have to, understand that our offense didn't play too well, that we need to do a little bit better. Justin did everything he could, and that's what I mean by everything he could. 47 attempts passing. What I'm trying to lament to is the fact that Greg Roman recognizing stuff early on in the game and not switching his plan when you always should stick to your guns. But when shit hits the fan, go ahead and switch things up. Go ahead and try and indulge in different areas. As soon as Najee Harris ACL blew, we turned to Justin Herbert in the pass game. We didn't really necessarily not trust Amarion, but we had Justin throw the ball 47 times. Yes, he had 300 yards and 1 TD and 1 interception, but that's what I'm saying. We need to just lean on our guy, trust him, and try and protect him. Try and protect him with everything that we have. Now that we just have Andre James added to the roster, I think, that's going to be our obvious center position and obvious starter at our center position going forward. Bradley Bozeman does have the C on his jersey, but at the end of the day, it's just not great production from Bradley Bozeman, and I have no idea why he continues to start. I get it. He's a great leader, locker room guy, a great cohesive unit going with him, but at the end of the day, he just doesn't do anything he needs to do on the field when he needs to do them. So that's just tough to see. But like I said, the defense is real, y'all. Having 89 total tackles as a defense at that point in time, 7 TFLs at that point in time, and 5 sacks, 2 by Nick Benito. It was in the game, 89 total tackles, 7 TFLs, 5 sacks, 2 by Nick Benito, who was all over the place. And, that defense is real, guys. The defense is real. But the Hufanga penalty really hurt the Broncos late in the game on that scoring drive, which is the reason why the Chargers got the bigger lead. Can never slam a player. We understand that. Obviously, once the whistle is blown, to go ahead and fling him backwards like that is so uncalled for, and nobody knows. Everybody knows that, and Hufanga knows that. This team shot themselves in the foot one too many times, and ultimately why the Chargers won. But big games, like I said, by Dobbins and Sutton and the Broncos are a threat. Bo Nix, slow start, always happens, and he'll be just fine, I think, towards the end of the season. Yes, like I said, slow start for Bo Nix, and I feel like a lot of people were kind of looking at him like, oh, sophomore slump. No, it's just slow start again. I think he'll be just fine. But yeah, man, that's how this Chargers team is looking as of late, and it's not looking too great. Like I said, we're looking forward towards the Miami Dolphins, who really haven't had a great season so far. Just came off a tough loss. Their first career win for Cam Ward in the Tennessee Titans uniform. Comeback win at that. They were up, I believe, 17-0 at one point. The Dolphins were, and the Titans came back. So there's a lot going on right now internally with the Miami Dolphins. A lot of down energy because of the fact that obviously Tyreek Hill just went out for the season and they're losing on top of that, and they're not really hopeful on Tua. But this is also another matchup for Herbert and Tua being in the same draft class. Tua being selected before Herbert. I understand how a lot of Dolphins fans feel already. So I'm not gonna add fuel to the fire. But it is another opportunity for Herbert to go ahead and show why he is the better quarterback in this draft class, and possibly the best quarterback in this draft class if he can get some playoff wins under his belt, which I know he's capable of. But at the end of the day, guys, it's just a Miami team that we can bounce back on, and I understand that it sucks. You don't want to, kick them while they're down, but it's the NFL. Nobody cares how you feel. Kick them while they're down. We need the win. They don't. So let's go ahead and get this dub on Sunday, and I'll be in San Jose back home, so hopefully I can get a podcast off back home, and you guys can see my room and all my flags and all this stuff. This is my room in San Diego, but at the end of the day, I just want to show you guys, the original set that I was going to go ahead and get going. That was on my TikTok page, but like I said, with all that being said, appreciate you guys tuning in. That is a wrap of Chargers Banter. We're looking forward to next week, guys. Enough with the past. Enough with our record. Enough with who's behind us. Let's continue to move forward. These are winnable games, guys. They're winnable games. We'll go ahead and face the Miami Dolphins, and we'll see how we fare this Sunday. But like I said, appreciate you guys tuning in to this episode of Chargers Banter. We're finally back in the motion of things, and we'll be getting into it with the Thunder Banter as well as JPA episodes. So, the Padres lost, so it's all other sports from here on out. And like I said, we locked in now. We locked in. But it's go Chargers. Tune in next week and tune in to this game this Sunday. Boat up, baby.